why humor works and is because it's based in empathy. In order for me to make you laugh, I have to understand you as a person.
Welcome to Experience Points, presented by our friends at Avtex who transform customer experience through CX design and orchestration. On Experience Points, contestants earn points by answering customer experience questions and share their insights on how to make your interactions remarkable. Those points turn into dollars for the charity of their choosing. I'm Joey Coleman.
And I'm Dan Gingiss, and we'd love to introduce you to today's contestant.
Matt Kazam has spent 30 years as a stand-up comic with over 6,500 shows as an expert on the science of humor. He has his long-running must-see show at the Riviera Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas called 40 is Not the New 20. He also coaches some of the top CEOs and entrepreneurs in the world on how to use comedy in the workplace, including for Kevin Harrington of Shark Tank. Matt, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and play the games and just spend some time with you folks. And it's really great to be here to raise some money for the charity. I mean, Homes Not Borders, doing some great work with immigrants and refugees coming to this country and really starting them off on the path to, just becoming part of America. And my father was an immigrant. My mother's side, second generation. This is what the country was about. Bringing these folks in here. Without programs like this, I wouldn't be here, and if you think about that, you think about the great work that they're doing. So I'm so happy, and thanks so much for giving me this opportunity.
Oh, I love it, Matt, and we're so happy to have you here and playing for such a great cause. Let's go ahead and get into our game. Today we're going to be playing What Happened.
In What Happened, listen to the first half of a real customer experience. Choose between two possible endings to complete the story. Answer correctly for 200 experience points. You will have the opportunity to earn an additional 50 points for each insight you share from your own experiences.
All right, let's play What Happened. Kate went to her cable provider's retail store to pick up some new updated remotes and other supplies. The employee at the store looked up her account and then provided the items. Kate went home, installed everything, and it didn't work. She called customer service, who tried to fix the issue remotely, but they couldn't. The cable company decided that somebody needed to come out and help Kate in person. What happened?
Now, option one is that the technician came to Kate's house and told her that the retail store had given her the wrong equipment for her zip code. He happened to have the right equipment in his truck, so he installed it. On her next statement, Kate saw a $75 installation charge and had to talk to 3 people at customer service to get it removed from her account.
The second option for what happened. The technician came to Kate's house and told her that the retail store had given her the wrong equipment for her zip code. Unfortunately, he didn't have the right equipment either, but he helped her schedule a second appointment a few days later. That technician arrived with the wrong equipment as well. It took her 3 trips and nearly 2 weeks, but Kate finally got her equipment. So, Matt, you've heard 2 options for what happened. Which one do you think shares the way this story actually ended? Was it the first example where she had to pay the cable company for their mistake by paying a $75 installation fee, or the second one where she had to wait for 3 different people to come out to her home until she got the right equipment? Which one sounds like the correct bad experience for what happened?
Oh, gosh. I do believe he drives around and he has all the other equipment in there. And I do believe that they would charge you for it, though I have been in the situation where the cable person, because they do operate kind of as a small business, tried to make it right for me. And if he didn't do something, I would have got banged for another fee. And he told me about that. But I'm saying that pay for our mistake is the one that happened.
So you're going for option number 1, and Matt, that is the correct answer. Great job identifying what actually happened to poor Kate.
So yeah, we've obviously seen how not to do this. If you were in charge of the cable company, if you were the person whose job it was to help make sure that customers were getting remarkable experiences, what insights or ideas do you have about how this could have been handled better?
Don't bang them for the $75, you know? I mean, or at least be transparent about it, because I don't think there's any part in there where they mention that, hey, listen, if I do this for you here, do you want me to install it? Or if you go back to the store, you can do it without the $75, you know? But I think when it shows up on your bill, then the real customer experience starts, you know? How do they make that right? But our real thing is, how do we not get there in the first place, you know? And for a lot of this, the cable installer is a kind of a gig worker for them. You know, he's just driving around, and so they need training as well. And it's the cable company. That makes sense. You know, there's different speeds and different things. So, you know, having the answer in layman's terms, not just you messed up, you got to eat it, but you know, maybe giving them a little lesson too on the technology and why this is a problem, and more common than you probably think, you know, is when you get in there and then, you know, at least it's not just, you know, you made a mistake and now you're going to have to pay for it. So, you know, that's how I would make it better, sure. And I would make cable free. And maybe even do that, you know, instead of charging the $75, give her a free month of HBO. You know what? You know, throw in.
Pay you to watch cable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, absolutely.
Yeah, Matt, you've given us some great ideas of how this could have been better. You know, as somebody who uses humor in your day-to-day life all the time, could you speak a little bit to how corporations can walk that fine line of using humor when something goes wrong without taking it too far to, you know, potentially offend the customer, but maybe acknowledging the reality of a mistake being made with maybe some self-deprecation or something like that? Any thoughts on how a brand or a business can do that?
Sure. I mean, and why humor works is because it's based in empathy. In order for me to make you laugh, I have to understand you as a person. And for somebody like me, it's just math. I just take the variables, and next thing you know, I've made a real human connection. And that's a lot of the work I do speaks to that. And meaning also that I think how they fix the problem, if you just gave her the free HBO at this point, she's been charged this. She spent time fuming on hold, you know, knowing that, you know, how many times she's gotten hung up on and all that part of it. So we had a client here in Vegas that had a group of buffet tickets in their pocket. And I always say customer experience is not your problem until it is, right? So, you know, if you're the security guard on the floor, your job is to protect the safety of the place. But 25 times an hour, somebody asks you where the restroom is. So you know that can be replicated and duplicated, and an easy place to connect with somebody on humor, because we all go to the bathroom. So look for the commonality in what the person's experiencing, because listen, the cable installer, the customer service, we're all getting screwed by somebody. So it's easy to kind of understand what you're going through and how frustrating it is, and just letting them know that they're being heard. You know, that became the problem at the casino. When somebody came up and had a complaint, they said, oh, here's $50 to the buffet. And it made it worse because they weren't being heard. Then they gave another $50. They had a $100 coupon. That made it even worse because here's a place where they're paying $1,000 a night for a hotel room. You think you can buy them all for an extra $50, and they're not being heard. So, you know, we worked with them on empathy and listening skills, and, you know, that's what they want at that point, because the problem's still going to be the problem. It's how we control the playing field of this problem, and that's how it de-escalates versus escalates. And I think explaining how the problem occurred, you know, I mean, taking some ownership and getting in front of it, and letting them know also, a lot of times we complain not because we have a problem, but we don't want to see anyone else go through that. And here you are trying to do this, and it's all they want to do is just give you something to sedate you, and that is a recipe. So, you know, we always think about the outcome. That's what comedians do. I have to predict the outcome, which is going to be laughter, that I'm going to give them this information, tell them this story, vet the words for their emotional attachment, and choose the right one so that I'm making a connection with a person and not just complainer. So let's humanize this situation. And humor does that beautifully.
Yeah, I love that you brought up empathy, Matt, in comedy, because obviously empathy is a hallmark of customer experience. And I think one of the easiest ways to do that, which it sounds like you do on stage, or at least in preparing to get on stage, is just knowing your audience and knowing who you're talking to. And we often talk about getting in your customer's shoes. I often recommend to companies that, if you're not a customer of your own company, that you really should be, because there's no better way to figure out what your customers are going through. It may all make sense in a conference room or in a planning meeting, but then when it's actually happening in real life, it's not being executed the way that you think.
Could you speak a little bit to the science or the technique that you bring to the table to recognize that different people in your audience, or in your case, different customers, are going to respond to different things, and how to craft an experience that touches on each one of them? Like, what is the structuring or the thinking about this beforehand? And then how do you check to make sure it's actually working once you're taking that show live?
Yeah, for sure. The funny thing is, comedy's not built this way. It was at one point, and that's kind of what I based my science on. Bob Hope, old days, Bob Newhart, George Burns, it was one comedian made the whole family laugh. Okay, so they all got around the TV and one comedian, and they just talked about life, truth, things, and it wasn't niche comedy, which is what it is now. It's like, if you're this is your mom, here's your comedian. If you're a single dad, here's your comedian. If you're Asian, here's your comedian. And so you don't really think about it in comedy because you're just going after this small little slice. But I want to be a throwback, I want to sell more tickets too. I don't want the niche, I want this to be a show for everyone. So I think when you mine for the material, which is, everyone thinks joke writing is the writing a joke. I got to write a joke. But it really is about taking an idea, a thought, and dragging it through your subconscious so all of your truth attaches itself to it, all your memories, all your experiences. Then you have this pile of raw materials, and then it's just about using the formula and crafting the joke so that the point of view comes across so well, and then it's interpreted differently by all these people. But it's been so well written and mined, and they've gone through the process that because it isn't my story, it's our story. And if you came into it only 20 years ago, it's built for you to get something out of it there. But if you've been around 60 years or 80 years, and that was the great thing about the Riv, I would get people in their 90s, they love the show more, because if I look at the world and think it's a crazy place, they look at it and go, oh my goodness, this is, incredible. But the takeaways are kind of front loaded in there. So it's not just, here's what I want to say, you better get it. And if you don't get it, it's your fault. Whereas, if you think about it so much and understand each person and their connection to the experience, because not everybody's going to have the same thing. Some people want an experience to be longer. Some people want the experience to be shorter. Some people would rather have, digital communications, get a text message. I'd rather get somebody on the phone, so it's different for everybody. But just do the math. It's just math. What are the variables? What are the outcomes? And I always say, what's the hit rate? What is the rate of success? Because you want to catch lightning in a bottle too sometimes, so you want to leave it organic enough so that the experience, the data comes from it, which is, you say, how do you get the data? You ask for it. During my show, I would ask them at a certain point, because it's all about, getting feedback from them and getting testimonials that you can use. So I would stop a point in the show and I would ask them for feedback and ask them to write a review if they liked the show. And if they didn't, just keep that to yourself. Everybody don't got to know your problems. Not everybody has to know your problems. But I would analyze the data, I would ask them questions with surveys. I had their emails, I was able for me to figure out. But again, the things I can control. There was a show before us. If they ran long, My people were waiting in line longer. I have 20 minutes of pre-show music. I got to now speed that up. Some nights they couldn't order their drinks. So the customer experience has been screwed up by things that were outside of my control, but I always owned them when I went on stage. It was my show.
All right, Joey, let's recap how Matt did playing What Happened.
Well, in this game, guessing correctly what happened earns you 200 points. And Matt knew what happened. He also had a number of great insights during our discussion, and those insights are worth 50 points each. So when we add up Matt's great ideas, of which there were 6 of them, to the 200 points he earned beginning, we get a total of 500 points, which means a $500 donation to Homes Not Borders. Congratulations, Matt, and congratulations to the nonprofit Homes Not Borders for the donation from Matt based on his gameplay.
Outstanding. Well, great job, Matt. This concludes this episode of Experience Points. Check out more games with the funny man, Matt, and other celebrity contestants at experiencepointsgame.com. That URL again is experiencepointsgame.com. We'll see you next time for more remarkable customer experiences on Experience Points, presented by Avtex.
Well, they had me at the word empathy.
Same. I'm there.
So, but I think it's really true is that, in the story or in the scenarios they gave, there was some level of empathy. Gosh, you got the wrong piece of equipment, so I've got it in my truck. So it was nice that the problem got fixed right away, but then, there was nothing that indicated, by the way, that was our mistake. You shouldn't have to pay for a mistake, and then it kind of gets wound up from there. But I think it's so true that if you're going to design and orchestrate a memorable experience, it's not so much meeting the functional need. We talk about this all the time. It's not so much meeting the functional need. It's also meeting the emotional need, and you can only do that if you have deep empathy and really understand the consumer, the member, the constituent's point of view.
Yeah, and he said that in a number of ways. I got to tell you, that was one of the better kind of CX rants I've heard in a long time. He touched on all aspects of the design orchestration spectrum that we talk about a lot. But I mean, to your point, he said the problem's going to be the problem. It's how you come at it, and talks about the example of people not being heard, right? And I think there's a fascinating concept of the customer leading the torch for other customers to follow them, and them not wanting other people to have that same example.